Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Life with Mary Walter. Let me go turn down that music because I know you don't want me to. I know you want to hear as much of that amazing music as you possibly can. License-free music isn't necessarily always the best, but we don't get our video taken down if we use it. I'm Mary Walter, the host of Mary Walter Radio, the podcast. You know me. And this is Alan Sanders, host of the Alan Sanders Show on 95.5 out of Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining me.
Mary, thank you so much for having me. It's you know what? The coolest thing about the internet, let's face it, you can use a tool to bash someone over the head or build a house. And you and I are building a great house all of a sudden. I reached out, you responded back, and I ran to my wife. I'm like, I'm going to be on the Mary Walter Show. Can you believe that? She's like, well, go do it.
And she said, who?
We listen to a lot of talk in our house. That's kind of a driving thing that I've been addicted to it pretty much since I had to start driving to the Atlanta area, getting stuck in traffic, you know. That was my introduction. I don't know about you, but for me, it was I'm tuning in for weather and traffic, and then I have to like tune to something else, and then I just host, then I started listening and learning, then I got addicted, then I turned into one of them myself.
Then you decided, you know what, honey, I want to work until I'm 80 and we'll never really be able to afford a nice home. So I'm going to quit this job and go into talk radio.
You know, it's so true. But on the flip side, I can tell you this, Mary, and I know it's an introduction right now to the audience of who I am for your audience. I have never been happier. I had a job where I was making more money. I was with IBM for many, many years. I was an IT manager. I would work as many hours as I'm working now, making more, but I never enjoyed really what I was doing. Every single day I get on that microphone, it's like I'm getting paid to play. I'm getting paid to take what is a passion and bring it to an audience. And I am forever grateful of just stumbling across this career path.
Well, that's wonderful. And I'm glad. And it's somewhat of an addiction. I kind of get it. You know, I don't think I am as addicted to it as a lot of people I know. Who are just like, oh my God, it's in my blood. I have to do it. You know, or it's like if someone came along and offered me a gig making what I was making in Washington, you know, just 2 years ago, I'd be like, sure, where do I sign up? They'd be like, but you can't do talk radio anymore. I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, see, and that'd be the exact opposite because for me, and I guess because my wife and I have learned that you can scrimp a penny. You can do some of the homesteading. We're doing a lot more gardening. We're doing a lot more self-production on our own land. We're taking advantage of the COVID stuff taught us that. And we can survive. You know, you realize money is great. You got to pay the bills. You want to make sure that you have things. You want to go on trips. But to have something that you love to do each and every day, it never feels like I'm going to work.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. So just to tell everybody, how did you wind up in radio? Just a little bit of a primer for people who don't know you. Tell them who you are, what's your show about.
Sure. So it started by accident. I do a lot of theater, I did a lot of video production, and I was involved in a show, and there was a local station that's had a Saturday kind of a free-form talk show. They invited me on as a guest. So I hit it off with the host. We had a good time. He's like, come back anytime. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you say that to everybody. So like 5 months goes by, bump into him, and he's like, why didn't you ever come back? I was like, well, I'm not involved in a show. He goes, no, I'm serious. We had a good time. Ended up getting a Saturday gig. Turned out I was just going to go in for Saturdays. That's it. Just 3 hours on a Saturday. A few years later, I was still with IBM. I was taking care of the West Coast as clients, so they weren't coming online until probably more like 10, 11 o'clock East Coast time, right? So I said, hey, there's an opening for the morning show gig at the station. They need me to do the morning show 6 to 9 a.m. Is that okay? And my boss was like, as long as you're at work by 10 a.m. our time, you're fine. So I started doing morning radio. That was 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, just stumbled into it. Got involved in talk, started making contacts, and reached out one day to Eric Erickson, who is a nationally syndicated host. And somebody had filled in for him, ticked off his audience. He called me and said, hey, you know how you just jokingly said, if I ever need a fill in, how would you like to fill in? Next thing I know, I'm at WSB Radio in Atlanta.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, were you living in the Atlanta area? You were living in the Atlanta area to begin with.
I lived in Northwest Georgia, so probably about an hour drive away from the Atlanta metro.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was you and I both kind of skipped the whole trudging or uprooting your family, moving across the country if you want another gig. Like that's in the position I'm in now. Like I'm not moving at this stage of my life. I'm at the stage of my life now where I'm like, I want to work like 3 more years and then I would like to, because we've lived below our means our entire lives so that we could have a nice retirement, which is why I wouldn't have minded, gilding the lily a little bit towards the end of the career,
Uh-huh.
just to make sure we're really comfortable. And I would like to do all the stuff that I've never ever. My husband was still to this day is working 10-hour days easily, and we just work, 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 work. So I'm kind of at that point now where I wouldn't mind being able to do stuff like, I don't know, trim the rose bushes in the backyard because it hasn't been done in 2 years. Um, Clean a bathroom because I don't have time to do that. This is what I'm looking forward to being able to do. That's how low the bar is. I have about 18 of my husband's shirts I have to iron. Like it's so I'm looking forward to being able to do that stuff, during the day instead of trying to fit it in at 11 o'clock at night. Because I have no time because all we do is work. And listen, I'm very blessed to have the work, but if I had a full-time gig, I would be working half as much and making, 4 times as much as
Right.
opposed to doing the fill-in stuff where I'm working, you know, 4 times as much. I'm working easily twice as hard as I was, but when I had a full-time gig and I'm making easily a 12th of what I was making, then.
Right.
So I'm to that point where I'm ready. I'm ready. So, okay, let's see who's here. Wild Bill says, hello, Queen Mary. Hello, Wild Bill. So, Alan, just so you know,
Mhm.
the reason I use the Queen is our number one fan is Zach Stone. And Zach's dad does all the graphics for me. He did when we were, branding and doing all that stuff. He does everything. And his son loves the show. And so I had one time as a joke put the Queen up on my up here, as my name, like the Queen. And Zach ever since then calls me the Queen.
Mm.
So I can never change it because he's always asking his dad to put the Queen on, put the Queen on. So I will now. I can't change it because we love Zach so much. It's like our show mascot. So
Nothing wrong
I
with that.
can
I mean,
never
it,
change
it
that.
is your show. If you want to go by royalty, that's fine with me.
So, which leads me into a fun story.
All right.
First of all, before everybody came on when the music was playing, I realized that it's the season. So I had two fur balls behind me on the floor and didn't even realize it. So I came running in here. I don't know if you saw. I leave the room. I come back in. I got a big roll of paper towels and I've got the 409 because I had to rehydrate it because it was a little desiccated. And then I just found another one on the other side. So I got to do that one later. And I'm like, oh, they always throw up on the fringe of the rug. I don't
Right.
understand how they do it, but they do. Anyway. So I had to go today to the hospital, have some x-rays done. Nothing serious. So thank you. I know it was nothing serious. And I had last time I was at the hospital a couple months ago for some other tests. They have this new system and you have to put in all of these. It was just like 10 minutes. Usually put in first name, last name, date of birth. You're in the system. What are you here for? Blah, blah, blah. Routine blood work. Boom. In you go. 3 seconds.
Mhm.
Oh no, the guy in front of me is taking a really long time. And I'm like, okay, he's a senior. So maybe can't quite figure this out. Maybe I'll help him. And I start to go over and I'm like, oh, it's a different screen. There's literally, I kid you not, about 10 minutes worth of questions. They wanted to know country of national origin. They wanted to know, have I traveled in the last year? Where did I go? Did I leave the country? Where did I go? If I was in the United States, where did I go? Do I have COVID? Do I know anyone who has COVID? I'm like, really? We're still doing COVID questions? And all this stuff. Then they want to take my picture. And I'm like, no, you can't take my picture. I notice there's this camera on the computer. I'm like, what the hell is happening? So I started getting snarky with them. And I think according to my record, I picked Azerbaijan as my country of national origin because I just
Did
started
you
getting
do that on
snarky.
purpose?
Yeah, of course. I'm like, you start asking me stupid questions. I'm getting a routine blood test. Why do you need to know this? They wanted to know my gender assigned at birth. I'm like, A, who assigned it? And B, if you're a hospital and you can't figure that out on your own, I'm going to question your ability here.
We are so on the same page, not to interrupt your story, but I
Go.
go bananas at this stumbling yourself over backwards, bending your brain into some kind of pretzel logic so you don't in any way offend somebody who's already got a significant mental health problem. Like, we are normalizing their aberrant problem. We are saying, oh, okay, we don't want to in any way harm your fragile little bubble
Right.
you've built for yourself. Instead of just saying, oh, you want to go by guy? Fine, whatever, move along. Not give me 75 genders for me to choose from.
Right. So now I have to jump through all the hoops because we're going to pretend that we all have that same mental thing going on. And whether it's an illness, whatever it happens to be, I'm not sharing in it. And it's a finite percentage of the population. Why are we doing this? So we finally got to your name. And I'm like, I already entered that. And your pronouns. So I don't even remember what I put for pronouns or don't care. What I forget. I was just so over because there's a line of people behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to preferred name and I had had enough. So I put in Your Majesty. Right?
Okay.
Because they have to call
you by, right?
Right. They have to call you by your preferred name. So I'm like, well, now they have to call me Your Majesty. And I think that that's just wonderful. So put it in. Boom. And you sit down, go through this whole thing. And so you have to go over, then you got to go to registration, blah, 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 blah. It was just like, it was a half hour to get a routine blood test. It was the dumbest thing ever. So the woman who's taking the blood test, lab techs are great. They're hilarious. And I'm the only one sitting in there now. And I can see her looking at, she's going.
Is there royalty in here?
And she's trying to see. And I see her stick her head. I'm like, you looking for me? And she just looks at me and she goes, you know what your preferred name is, right? I'm like, yes, I do. And she just starts cracking up. I'm like, they just started asking me dumb questions. So I just decided to give them dumb answers. She goes, you know, if you're ever in the hospital, like if you're here, they have to refer to you that way. And I said, if I'm ever in the hospital, I'm having my husband bring me a tiara. As a matter of fact, I have one. So I'm going to make him bring my tiara, this stupid dopey tiara that I brought for the Prince William's wedding because I went to a party. I'm going to make him bring that tiara. And I'm sitting there with that tiara on. Everybody comes in my room. I'm going to go like this. So I go today. Let's fast forward. I go today and he meets me and we have different last names. And so he feels like he's okay at this point in the game. Like nobody's on to him, like that we're related. So some people know. And so I go in and first I have to go to registration, blah, blah, blah. And she pumps out everything and he's looking over her shoulder. Like, and he goes, it says Your Majesty on your records. Right? And I went into my chart, like I went into my patient portal and sure enough, my blood test come to Your Majesty Walter. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting for them to call me. And there's 3 booths. Nobody's doing anything in any of those booths and nobody's calling me. And I just look at him, he goes, you are so bad. And I said, I just can't wait. And the guy stands up, he goes, Mary. And I'm like, and I walk over, I go, I should have sat there, but my husband knows the guy. So I got up and I went over, I go, you didn't call me by my preferred name. And he doesn't say anything. I go, why didn't you call me by my preferred name? And the wristband I get says Mary on it. It doesn't say Your Majesty. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, but we can't use that. I go, why not? I said, you will call a 6'3", 275-pound dude sporting a beard and a mustache, Tiffany, if that's what he wants you to call him. You will do that, but you won't call me by my preferred name?
Well, see, the difference is he knows that you're not crazy, and so therefore he can mess with you. Whereas the people that are crazy, you can't mess with.
But he went into my chart and changed my preferred name.
Oh, it was changed under your preferred label.
He went in and changed it. Yes.
Oh.
So now I'm pissed. So tonight, this afternoon, I got back to the house and I changed it right the hell back.
Yeah, I didn't think they're supposed to do that, but
I didn't either.
Interesting.
I didn't either.
I have been, I guess, blessed in a way so far. I have not had to have any of these confrontations, but it is befuddling to me. In my background, when I was back in college, I thought I was going to be the next, Sigmund Freud. I got my degree in psychology, thought I was here to help people. And then I realized I have absolutely no patience for people's, basically people who just whine. I feel like there is a reason why psychology exists for people who need it. I believe there is good use of counseling, but for the most part, I was like, I can't do it. So I ended up not doing that job. But when I was being taught that, we were under the belief that there is a set of behaviors, if you will, that we
Right.
consider normal. Like what citizens as a normal civilized society have decided were acceptable ranges of behavior. Like we don't just get naked in public and run around. That's just something you're not supposed to do. If you have a
Wait,
predilection,
what?
yeah, no kidding. If you have a predilection for that, maybe you should talk to somebody, say about time and appropriateness. Where's the right time? We have gotten to the point, and I feel this. I'm not just saying it as like hyperbole, that we have decided to normalize the aberrant behavior and make aberrant normal behavior. Like if you're a quote normal person, well, there's something wrong with you that you want everyone to treat you normally and you want to treat everybody
Right.
normally. They want to be treated special and unique, and you should
Right.
bow. And I'm like, that's not helpful. We're not helping people. It'd be like when somebody suffers body dysmorphia, which is the actual physical or mental
Right.
psychological problem. If you are truly trans, if you believe you're a transgender, if you truly have body dysmorphia, but that means you have to physically and literally hate your body, not just because you think it's cool to switch. There's an actual set of and things that you're supposed to measure medically to find out if you have that. Well, body dysmorphia, that's the same thing that people have when it comes to anorexia. Now,
Right.
if somebody comes to me and I see that they're super, super thin, and I'm going, man, are you okay? I'm like, what are you talking about? You better call me fat because I know I'm fat. Everyone knows I'm fat, and I need you to call me fat so that way I'll lose more weight. Am I helping the person by saying, oh, okay,
No.
it's anorexic, let's just call you chunky? Is that going to help
Right.
her? No, it's only going to reinforce the behavior, and it's going to send her down a path where it's going to lead to serious problems. Well,
Right.
why are we doing anything different with people who suffer, quote unquote, this, and I think it's more of a fad of transgenderism.
Agree. Yep. I agree with you about it being a fad. These kids went in middle school. Um, Middle school's terrible. You want to break Guantanamo prisoners? Make them sit in the middle school cafeteria for a week. They'll tell you anything they want that you want to know to get the hell out of there because those kids will beat them down physically, mentally, and every other way, and they'll be scarred for life. So it's a horrible place. So hold on. Don't do that. Oh,
Don't you love pets? We could do an entire segment. I've got my 4 dogs, and they're in here with me because if they're in here with me, when the Amazon ferry shows up, hopefully they won't bark. But if they're out there, they see the Amazon truck pull up, they'll bark for 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she did it anyway. The sun is making spots on the wall, and so she's chasing them. So if you hear a big crash, it's the TV going to the ground.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but no, I think it's a fad because these kids in middle school, it's all like 13-year-olds. Who wants to be 13 again ever? No, nobody wants to be 13 again ever because it's a horrible, horrible phase of life. Your like feet are too big, you smell, your legs are too long,
Mhm.
you got pimples, you got braces. Like it's a disaster period, right? Like
Right.
it's just horrible. It's like God put the wrong parts in, but then it all evens itself out when you get to the other side of it, right? And then you're fine. But
Right.
if I had been a child at that time, I wanted to be a boy so badly because I grew up. I had 2 younger brothers. All the kids in the neighborhood were boys. My cousins are all boys. I have one female cousin on my mom's side that we didn't see very much at all. So I primarily saw my 5 boy cousins. So it was me, them, my brothers, their friends, and they got to do really cool stuff. So when I was growing up, I'm in the woods. I learned how to shoot in making tree forts. I was like the ultimate tomboy, and I
Mhm.
hated wearing dresses and all this other stuff. But my mother would be like, "I don't care. We're going to grandma's. Put the damn dress on." Like, and that's that.
Right.
And I hated it. And but if they had listened to me, I would have had my breasts cut off. I never would have gone through puberty. I would have regretted it so. I mean, I guess I would have regretted it getting out the other side because I'm totally fine now.
Right.
Seem to
Your
survive
story
just great.
Your story is exactly like my wife's. She is a middle only girl in a family of 5 boys and a
Oh,
coach and a history teacher for a father. And she watched her brothers, and she lived in a farm upstate New York. They were always in the mud. They were always playing. She was always playing with them. She actually said one day, she goes, all my brothers pee standing up. When will I get to? Now, if a person asked that today, they go, oh, you must want to be a boy.
you must
No,
be
my wife
right.
doesn't know any better. She just sees her siblings it's just assumed. You kind of know the difference between boys and girls, but she's like, well, my brothers have it so much easier. When do I get to turn into that?
Right.
I can
Right.
tell you for a fact, she says to this day, she's like, I have never, I mean, I love being a mom. I love being a wife. I love being a woman. I just happened to be a tomboy growing up. Thank God we didn't have this problem when we were young. You know,
Right. Exactly.
that just because you like to climb trees, you must be a boy. You know, that's just nonsense.
Basically, thank God our parents ignored the hell out of us when we were kids.
Mhm.
I mean, that's pretty much what happened. Our parents ignored us. That we would get my mother in the summer just be like, get out of the house and don't come home until the lights go on, the back light goes on. Don't come home. I
Right.
don't care where you go. Just don't hurt yourself. If anybody gets hurt, just come and let me know. Because we didn't have phones. We grew up where there were no pay phones, the middle of nowhere. And we would be in the woods for hours, gone.
Mhm.
See ya. And, we always managed to find our way home and nobody got killed and, nobody hurt anybody. And that was it. But our parents had no clue where we were, no clue what we were doing. My mother didn't care at all about my self-esteem. She didn't care about it. She's like, you're a child. You're great. Good for you. This is what we're doing. And that's the end of the discussion.
And
I don't know.
see,
It was a different time.
there is a pendulum swing here that I think we've experienced because, I'm Gen X. Sounds like you were as well. That whole, hey, you're third grade. You can come home by yourself after school, let yourself in the front door, start making dinner. We'll be home at 6, right? Both parents working. You're a latchkey kid. You learn self-reliance. You learn certain things. And I guess maybe some of us grew up, and let's face it, the Gen Xers are the helicopter parents. I think the pendulum swung so far the other way. You had parents who thought, well, because I was ignored, I'm going to be my kid's best friend.
Yeah.
I think that's just as bad, in my estimation, if not worse, than it is to, well, hey, maybe it's okay to teach your child a little self-reliance, a little cold, hard reality. You aren't gifted at everything. Maybe you're not special at everything. How are you going to figure out what you're really good at if your parents keep lying to you that say you're the greatest at everything, right?
It's so funny. I was sure I was going to be a gymnast and I wrecked my knee and that was the end of that. And there was, I forgot what I wanted. I was going to do something. Oh, horseback riding. It was horseback riding. My mother's like, honey, we're not paying for this anymore. I'm like, I want to do it. She's like, you're not good at it.
Right. Gotta
And
be
I was
honest.
like, oh, okay. All right. She's like, we need to find something else.
Here's something. I wrote this so long ago. I started off like a lot of people putting a blog page together before doing radio and podcasting and things like that. And I wrote a piece that basically said, the more a child misses out on adversity early, like learning those hard lessons, the
Yeah.
sticking your knee and getting back up. Kids are resilient. Oh yeah, they're going to hurt their feelings. They're going to cry. And then 5 minutes later, they'll go back up and go do something else.
Right.
The longer it takes to learn those fundamental lessons, the harder I think it hits people. So when you've got a teenager or maybe even a young adult who's never been told no, never been told you stink at this, and they go to work and then their boss says, well, what you turned in sucks, and they have a mental breakdown, it's because they've never had any experience being told no or having any kind of
Right.
adversity. By sparing it early, I fully believe you are creating a mental health problem as an adult.
Yeah, well, I'm a little older than you are. Scott says he hit the nail on the head. That's it in a nutshell. They're young. They have wishy-washy ideas. A little girl wanted to kiss me in a tree fort. Oh, good for you,
Uh-huh.
Scott. Aw, there's no kissing in the tree fort. I got to tell you, when I was a kid, because I thought all the boys were gross. So you talk about adversity, and we've gotten off on a total tangent, which is fine, which is kind of what we do here. No. This is great. I don't mind going off on tangents. We have no set, if we don't get to Hunter Biden, the other 10,000 talk shows today talked about it. So it's okay. So when I was kindergarten, I had to take the bus. And I've told the story. So if you've heard the story, I apologize. But this is like my classic parenting by my parents. So my brothers I didn't even have a brother. I don't think I had a baby brother yet. So I was 6. And so maybe he was a newborn. And Halloween, and my mother, like, she was the original Martha Stewart. And she was a stay-at-home mom. So like I never could have, all I wanted was a boxed costume with one of those plastic masks that you couldn't
Yeah.
breathe through, right?
Little gray rubber band.
Right, with the rubber band that always broke.
And it broke
And
halfway
yes, so you
through
had to hold your
trick-or-treating.
mask up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My parents wouldn't let me have them because they cost money. So there was that. And my parents, if I want them, they would go, no, we're poor. And that was the end of the discussion. I was like, oh, okay. So like at 5 years old, I knew not to ask for anything in the store because my mother would tell me we're poor. So there's two stories coming out of the grocery store. They have those rides, they used to have those rides that you could ride. It was like a nickel to ride the horse or the rocket
Mhm.
ship or whatever. Always wanted to do it. I would get 1 penny only if I was good, and I'd have a gumball. That was it. So I always want that. My mother, to get me to stop asking and whining about it, looked at me and she said, children get killed on those rides. They can get electrocuted. So those parents who let their children ride those rides don't love them. I was like 4 or 5 years old and I already knew what electrocution was at that point in the game. And so I was like, oh, so then here I am. If we go shopping with somebody else's friend, and the mom would be like, do you want to ride the ride? And I would be like, oh no,
No, no, no, no.
my mother loves me. You don't love your child. What the hell is she talking about? I'm like, you can get killed on those.
Yeah. That once again, talk about pendulum swings and you want to talk about you just yelled squirrel and I'm a dog going, "Whoa." I have a feeling that was the kind of parenting that they just thought was normal. Lie, exaggerate, tell you the worst possible scenario so you won't ask again. And then as you get
Right.
older, when you accidentally find out that, okay, well, when I tried, like my mom, if you try alcohol once, you immediately become an alcoholic. I'm like, ooh, I guess I'll never try that. Then you try it because, you're going to be a rebellious teenager and go, well, I'm okay. I'm fine, and you realize, okay, well, what else did you lie to me about? So you got to be careful with that because then you start going, well, what other things could I try that mom said was not going to be good for me?
Well, that's the difference between boys and girls. And when we got older, my brothers and I Thanksgiving when we were like in our 20s, like when we first were like in college and that kind of stuff, we started to realize all the lies our parents told us.
Mhm.
My mother would be like, "Oh no, honey, we lied to you." And
Oh,
I
she
was like,
admitted
"What?"
that she lied.
"Oh yeah." She goes, "Honey, I had 3 children. I didn't have time for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, I didn't have time for, and she would tell us then lies. And she goes, do you know the reason we didn't have a dog for so long? Because I thought I was allergic to dogs. I'm like, well, you weren't allergic to dogs? She goes, no, but grandma told me I was because she didn't want a dog. It's like,
See,
oh, okay.
there's a fine line to all of this. We're teaching parenting here through all of our mistakes. I got to tell you, you got to be straight with your kids. You got to be honest, but you have to also be honest appropriate. You have to be honest appropriate. My wife would be the king of or the queen, I should say, of just saying, if you do that, you're going to get punished, period. And you got to stick to it. And she would do it. But I got to tell you, my dad, who passed away about 5 years ago, I remember when I first started learning to drive. I started, I'm like, oh, my dad told me all these stories about souping up hot rods and like laying rubber in the street and drag racing. So I was all excited to start doing it myself. And he goes, what are you doing? Slow down. I'm like, well, you used to do that. He goes, I never did that. Like, what are you talking about? Our whole lives, those were the stories. I think he suddenly realized the cool stories of when I was 4, 5, and 6 years old suddenly were coming back to haunt him now that I was driving age.
Right, right, right. So in the interest of full disclosure here, Shore Essentials, Jerry and I went to high school together. I think we went to junior high too. Right, Jerry? I think we went to junior high together too. We went to grade school together. Yes, we were in grade school together. He says, on the contrary, Mary, with some of the friends that we had growing up, it was their duty to put you into your place. It's what we did. That's very
Yes.
true.
Yes. Oh, yeah. If right. If you had good friends, you did not spare each other their feelings. If somebody did something stupid, then you were obligated as their friend to make sure that you had as much fun
Yep.
at their expense as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what though? But doesn't that make you, once again, that goes to the adversity thing. Doesn't that make you a tougher, better, more rounded person? I can handle heaven forbid, Mary, I can handle criticism. I can handle if somebody doesn't like my idea. And trust me, you and I probably both in this business get plenty of people who feel like it's their duty to reach out and tell us how wrong we are on everything. It's
Oh
okay.
yeah.
Let them. It doesn't bother me. There are some people who will let that live rent free in their heads for months. I'm like, why?
Right.
Don't do that.
I hate to say it because it makes me sound really old, but I feel like when my grandparents would be like, toughen up.
Right.
Like that's kind of what I
That's
feel
what
like
we're looking
saying,
at.
toughen up. Oh my
Yeah.
God. James and I get into this every now and then about like the toys we had when we were kids and the things that like I was soldering at the age of 8. Okay.
Yeah.
I was soldering. I drove my father had this big lawn tractor thing that when he bought it, he took me with him and I was probably second, third grades when you like 8, 9 years old to have blocks put on the pedals so I could drive it.
Yep.
And if I ever stopped it, got out and tried to clear something out from under it, I would have lost my hand. But he taught me not to do that.
Hmm.
And so I have all of my fingers.
Yep. Same way. I think, you keep saying, oh, I don't want to sound old, but I don't think you are. I think we grew up in a time where, once again, the parenting style was you teach your child self-reliance. You expect them to do chores. You expect them to learn how
Right.
to do things. And because you're expected to, it doesn't mean you loved it. I didn't love doing chores, but now I know how to cook. I know how to clean. I knew how to take care of my babies because I was the oldest of 4 boys. I learned how to do diapers. I learned how to feed. I learned how to do bottles, stuff that I hated as a child, but I did it and I learned from it. And now, I mean, honestly, I love the fact that I had that kind of that upbringing. I feel like there is no challenge I can't take on.
Yeah. Now let me ask you. And Jerry said we were in grade school and elementary school together. Yes, we were. So yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jerry. This is interesting. Scott says, I have a very extremely hard time with criticism. I work on excellence and admit excellence so much that I don't see the need for criticism. You want to handle this one, Alan?
I don't know kind of what he means by that. I see only excellence. I don't see criticism. I mean, I don't know what he
Well,
means.
he said, I work on excellence and emit excellence so much that I
Oh,
don't see the need for criticism, meaning that like he doesn't see what there is to criticize about him because apparently he's
oh,
perfect.
he's never been married.
Well,
I
that's when you find out how dumb you are. It's
Right.
amazing.
Exactly. You think you know it. Like, I thought I knew how to dress myself. I thought I knew how to match clothes. I mean, I think what he might be describing is something that let me back into it this way. And it was a great eye-opening moment for me when it came to full-fledged radio. When I first got on with WSB, the program director at that time was a guy by the name of Pete Spriggs, guy who's been in Atlanta radio for a long time, just retired recently. And we go to lunch. He's like, okay, look, I got to ask you something. Do you have an ego? And I heard it as the negative that it sounded like he was saying, do you have an ego? It's like, no, I'm a team player. I like working with the team. It's not about me. It's about whatever works for the station. He goes, then why do I want to listen to you? What? He goes, you're using ego negatively. I want to know, do you believe so much in yourself that what you're bringing to the microphone is worth listening to? I was like, oh, I said, okay. So I'm not egotistical, but yes, I do believe what I have to say is worthwhile. So yes, I believe that I have an excellence in what I bring. That doesn't mean I'm egotistical, though. I still am open to
Right.
feedback because I want to even be better the next time. So yes, I truly believe you always go forward with excellence. You always try to do your absolute best at everything. I taught my kids early on, if your name's associated with it, I don't know, maybe I scarred them. Maybe they'll talk to their therapist here in a few years. But I said, your name is a reflection of me and your mother as well. If you do a crappy job and your name's on it, they're going to go, wow, those parents stuck with their children. I don't want that. I don't want you to want that. If you're putting your name on it, I don't care. You do your absolute best. So yeah, you should always strive for excellence. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be open to feedback.
Right. So let me ask you, do your kids do chores?
Well, they're all older. They're all out of college except for my baby. But yes, they all did. In fact, my wife,
Okay.
who's a type A, in fact, she's so, I jokingly say, she's not just OCD, she's CDO because she has to put it in alphabetical order. She would create lists and she would weight the value of each of the things because there was always that, well, they only did 6 chores and I have 7 or I have 12. And like, well, 2 of their chores was mopping the floor and the other one was doing the toilets. Do you want to do that instead? I gave you dusting, so she weighted the jobs, but everyone had to do it. And when they all wanted an allowance, my wife was like, you've got clothes. You've got access to computers. You've got access to phones. You've got a roof over your head. You've got air conditioning. You're helping to make the household a livable place. That's your allowance.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, now on the flip side, when they came to us and said we're going to a birthday party, can we have $5 or $10 because we're going to a roller skating rink or pizza party? Obviously, we'd give them money for that, but
Right.
we just raise them with the idea that you have expectations. Those expectations are to clean your room, put the dishes away, clean up after yourself, get dressed, put your clothes away. They hated it just like I hated it, but you know what? They're adults
Right.
now and they're functioning and they're actually surviving in society. They don't suffer from time blindness and whatever other nonsense that's going on in these Gen Zers today.
That's the new thing. I have time blindness. I
Yeah.
just can't be on time. And I don't understand why people want me to be on time because it's really stressful for me. And I'm
We're,
like, oh,
oh,
sweetheart,
it's
you're
hard.
going
I
to have
get
a
it.
long, hard life ahead of you.
I I just
I'm sorry. I'm to the point where I just laugh at them. I'm like, okay, then you
you know,
can try again tomorrow because it didn't work today.
right.
Sorry.
I feel like they just invent things and then they want
Yes.
you to feel sorry for them all the time. It's kind of a sad existence.
No, you know what it is? It's a generation that had no consequences,
True.
right? There were no consequences, no responsibilities, no chores. You know, an excuse was made for everything, and the
Yep.
path was smooth the whole way. So they had no expectations, and everything was done for them. It's generation lazy, is
Hmm.
basically what they are. So everything's an inconvenience for them. They don't want to learn how to drive. None of them want to learn how to drive. They're more than happy with mom or dad driving them, or I'll just call an Uber,
Right.
you know, and they don't work. Mom and dad hand them everything. So they're directionless. They're lazy. I think that's just exactly what it is. So expecting them to show up on time is super hard for them and super inconvenient because they've never had an expectation that they was a deadline. That's it. Like if you have a doctor's appointment at 1:30 and you show up at 2:45, guess what? You can have an appointment 6 months from now because you're done. You missed it.
Mhm.
Sorry, came and went. That's the way life is. And so they melt down because they don't there someone has always fixed it for them. And now that they're out of school or they're in school and need to make classes and that kind of thing, there are not as many accommodations for them. So what do you mean there's no accommodation? I have a disability.
Right.
It's a disability.
It all goes back to how we kind of just got off on this side trail. If you don't teach early on those life lessons while your child still actually listens to you, don't expect them to suddenly at 18 decide you've got good advice for them because it's too late.
Right. Right.
I,
Exactly.
I had a pastor once, and I'm not a golfer per se, and I appreciated his analogy, but he did talk about this in one of his sermons. He said, and this was 20 plus years ago. He said, you know what I see too many of you parents doing? He goes, when it comes to golf, if your ball is 18 yards from the hole and you hit that ball, you can't wait for it to be 5 yards from the hole to go, oh, I aimed at the wrong spot. That ball has already had a trajectory. You guys decide at 5 years old, that ball's gone 5 yards. Now I should change what I'm doing with my child, or I'll wait till 8 yards, or I'll wait till 10. You have to aim for the hole from day one. You can't wait to change later. You got to start early. And that always stuck with me, the idea that your trajectory, now obviously it's simplified. Yes, psychologically we can make
Right.
changes ourselves, but the lesson at a high level is aim for what you want your child to be when they're 18. Do it today, not when they're 10. You need to do it the day they're
Right.
born. And you have to have those conversations with your significant other. What is going to be your parenting strategy? What will be your disciplinary strategy? Like you should know that ahead of time.
100%. So Queen's Raiders said at 8, I learned how to pick locks.
Yeah, see, my brothers probably could because we put them in the handcuffs because we were just we tormented our brothers.
Let's see. Scott, who said that, I exude excellence, so I don't see a need for criticism, said, a girl I was briefly seeing, he corrected, she was able to point out some things to me that I needed to work on, and it was quite helpful.
There you go.
So, right. I mean, we all try. I would like to think that we try to do our best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and listen, if you are self-aware at all as an adult, you know that you're not perfect. You know that there are things you need to work on. And like you
Yes.
said, If you're not sure, get married, and you check that box then, and you don't have to
You'll
worry
learn
about
quite
it.
quickly what you thought you had as learned lessons. You'll realize just throw that book away.
Exactly. All right. Since we've totally like gone off of everything that we're going to talk about, which is fine. Sometimes that happens, and I don't care about that because, like I said, it has been wall to wall Biden
Mhm.
coverage since what, Thursday? I mean, it's just been crazy. So we don't need to talk about that. I'm totally fine because I'm sure most
Well,
of you know everything that's going on anyway. So
whatever
we have
you
very
want to do.
smart viewers.
I've so enjoyed just having the conversation. But if you want to do rapid fire, if you want, I mean, I'm fine. We can do whatever
Well,
to make sure that we're somewhat topical to what's happening in the world.
Again, sometimes we had two podcasts since we had two podcasts. Tuesday night was political, and Thursday night was everything but politics. And then it got to the point where with my work schedule and everything was just too much. And with
Mhm.
my sidekick, my work husband, as I refer to him, it was too much with his work schedule and everything. So we melded them into one. So there are some nights where it's heavy politics, and there's some nights where we don't talk politics at all.
Mhm.
So you know what? Because it's my podcast, I could do whatever I want, and I don't have a program director yelling at me. So it's okay. A program director who's never been a talk show host in his life telling me what to do. I don't miss those days. I will
No.
say that. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I had one program director my entire career who used to say to us at our like we'd have meetings, and he'd say to us, he'd go, look, you know what the rules are. You know what the guardrails are. If you don't, come ask me. Otherwise, I will assume you know what you are not allowed to do. So don't do those things, and I will leave you alone. And we're like, okay, I could do that. It was great. Best
Mhm.
PD I ever worked for. It's fantastic. We did it. We have one topic that I wanted to talk about, and it's perfect because when I was speaking to you on the phone today, you said, "Well, I have four daughters. This is a perfect conversation for me to have." And it's a story that was carried in the New York Post. I adore the New York Post. You're in Georgia. I'm in New Jersey. So when I was commuting into New York to work at Fox, did a lot of work at Fox. So I was in the city a lot. When I was commuting in and out of Fox, you get on the train and everybody has tabloids. You have the New York Times, excuse me, the New York Post and the New York Daily News are the two big tabloids in New York. And everybody's got one of each because
Mhm.
one's left, one's right. And they fit under your arm. They're the perfect thing, and they're perfect for commuting because they don't take up a lot of room. I don't understand why tabloids aren't popular anywhere else. Like I don't understand why it's a New York thing. I don't get it. And at the time they went up to I think 75 cents each. So they were less than a buck. And I'm probably dating myself because I don't know how old they are now. Queen's Reader says the lock picking worked in college and the military. I'm sure it did. So they had a story that I decided to print out, and it's about a woman named Brittany Church, and she did a series of TikTok videos, which I am not on TikTok because
Mm.
I am one of those people who actually reads the fine print when signing up for something and clicking agree to terms of service. So I got partway through and said, well, I'm not signing up for this. So I am not on TikTok. And she's got millions of views on this series of TikTok videos. And she is 34 years old. Guess how many children she has?
Well, when I was that age, I had had all my kids, so 4.
Times it by 3.
12?
Yes. Look
Wait
at
a
you
minute.
good at math.
Wait
Yes.
a minute.
12 kids
Okay.
at 34. Okay.
Are they all
So
hers? Like,
all
not not
hers. Yeah,
adopted
those
or okay.
nope,
No
all
Brady
hers. She
Bunch
has
blended family, okay.
one set of triplets. Okay.
Okay.
Now, she claims that the reason that she has so many children is because she was not allowed to date until she was 16 years old. So she got pregnant at 15 years old. And so she claims that had she been able to date earlier, she would have known a little bit better how to handle these situations earlier. And so she says that she should have the crux of this whole thing is she should have been allowed to date when she was 16, before she was 16 years old. And I'll tell you more about it, but I want to know from you, are there any limitations on ages and things like that for dating?
So yes, there were, and in fact, we were pretty stringent early on, saying, because we all had athletes in the house, and we all were like, see, we remembered that boys will pretty much try to ruin anything a girl is trying to do with her life early on. They just will. And so I had these conversations. I use those exact words. I'm like, if you have a boy that you're interested in, and this was in high school now, this wasn't middle school. In high school, I'm having this conversation. If you have a boy who's interested in you and they want you to give up the things you love, that's not a boy you need to be hanging out with. You need to think about it. You're going to be all into it because it's going to be all feeling funny inside. You're going to be like, ooh, he's talking to me and he's hot, whatever. But if somebody really, truly cares about you, and that was the lesson we wanted to instill, they won't make you give up the things that you like doing, whether it's your soccer, whether it's piano, whether it's gymnastics, whether it's homework. If you have to get your homework done, that guy should know, okay, can't do anything tonight. You got homework. Well, see you tomorrow.
Right.
We instilled those lessons along with the responsibility and everything else. So yes, boys came along, and yes, I had to deal with that in my household. But as far as dating individually, it wasn't until they were in high school. If they wanted to go out as middle schoolers with a group, that was fine.
Right.
Group hanging out is what they would call it. They'd all go as a group, fine. But one-on-one dating, that was pretty much once they hit freshman year in high school, we were like, okay, we're going to open the door a little bit to this idea of you one-on-one dating.
Okay. So high school. So, so it was a little bit earlier because high school is usually 14, 15 years old, right?
Yeah, 14.
Freshman year?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit earlier. So she is from Arkansas City, Kansas, and she was raised in a strict Christian household. She got pregnant at 15. She gave birth shortly after her 16th birthday. The boy was 17 years old at the time. They got married.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, which I give them a boatload of credit for that. I mean, clearly the marriage is doomed. Obviously, they're never going to make it. I mean, we all know if you're 16 years old getting married, it's not going to happen. Okay?
The odds are against you.
Yes. And shockingly, it didn't work. But they were married for 6 years, which is pretty good. And she said she tried super hard to make it work, but she said that he had a drug use problem and was abusive, which I can understand because he's 17 years old and he's got a kid. He's a disaster, and he's got to support a wife and a kid, and she's trying to work. It's a mess, right?
Yes.
So
totally.
She was afraid of being a single mom at the age of 18 years old. How many kids do you think these two brain surgeons had by the time they were 18? She was 18 and he was 19.
So they had their first when she was 15. So what, they have two more by then?
She got pregnant at 15, gave birth at 16.
Okay. So maybe two more by then. So three by the time she hits 18.
Three kids at 18 years old.
So
because life is so easy.
Okay, so here's the first thing I heard in my head. When you started off down this path and she wanted to blame her parents, if she couldn't figure out the consequences of the actual physical actions that were leading to the birth of the child the first time around, that's on her. She might be able to blame her mom for getting the first child because she's like, I didn't know it would lead to this. But after that, you kind of have it figured out, right? It wasn't like, well, we tried something where he was in the other room and suddenly, boom, I got pregnant again by myself. No, it doesn't work that way. You know what caused it. So don't start blaming everybody else for the other 11. Well, 10, 9, 8, I guess, because one set were triplets. That's on you. That's a you problem. You didn't learn from your own mistake.
Right. Exactly. So she said she tried to make the marriage work because she wanted her kids to have a normal life. But after welcoming their 5th child, so she had 2 more with this guy, despite the drug abuse and abuse, allegedly, she decided to bring 2 more kids into the marriage because that makes it less stressful.
Well, yeah, no.
That's when she decided to get divorced, and now we're into 2010.
Okay. So she had 6 kids by this guy? 5?
5
kids with this guy. Where are the other 7?
Funny you should ask. After she got divorced, she unexpectedly became pregnant with her 6th child with some guy who he's just a footnote in this story.
Ah,
So that's number 6 is just by the second guy.
we call
Okay.
him Bounce Back. He was the bounce back guy.
Right. That's what they actually funny you should mention. That's what they named the kid. Um,
No.
I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Okay.
Um, then she met her husband in 2014. So she got divorced in 2010, meets some dude who impregnates her and somewhere in there, and then meets her guy who is her husband in 2014. They had 6 children together, including a set of triplet boys. By the time she was 32, she's a mom of 12.
That's astounding. That's astounding. I can't even I can't wrap my mind around that at that age. But my aunt, who my aunt has passed away, but she said as a child always wanted to have a baker's dozen, and she literally had 13 kids.
Oh my God.
Chose to. Now with the same guy after I think she actually went to college. He was a newspaper editor for the Detroit Free Press at the time. And she became a housewife, but she was a nurse before that. So she actually had a job and had a degree, but she said that was a choice. She wanted to have 13 kids. I can tell you, having been friends now with my cousins, who I didn't really meet a whole lot back then, they are they're miserable for the most part. And they blame the fact that they
Really?
had because it was an onerous household. It was constantly like the kids were forced into like basically labor. They were doing all this stuff. It just was not a happy household. So
Oh, that's
I
too
have
bad.
4 kids. I just have 4 girls, but it was a perfect number. Like I think we had a great number. They were best friends. They hung out together. They did everything together. Ended up going to
That's
college
nice.
together. My 2 oldest are both engaged. I'm planning a marriage in 3 months in October. I had to wait for the UGA football schedule to come out so we know the bye week, so we would know the one day we could have a Saturday wedding with no college football.
When is it? When is it?
October 21st.
I'm the 28th.
So that's going
Close.
to be the bye week for the UGA 2-time national champion Bulldogs. So that's why I wore the shirt, just for all of you.
Well, that's
watchers
fun. Congratulations.
But anyway,
Scott says, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
I was just saying, I think I'm curious where she is now, but the idea that the story started that because her mom wouldn't let her date, that she didn't figure this life lesson out for herself after her first child. You can figure this one out. That's not a good excuse. That is a whiny Gen Zer kind of approach. Actually, I guess it'd be a millennial approach to a problem.
34? Is that still millennial? That's like the low. That's the late millennials, right?
I think, yeah, that's definitely a millennial age.
Is it?
So,
Is that okay? Because millennials are now the older millennials are well into their 40s. So
yeah. Well, Gen Zers are what, 20? Because we got Gen Alphas now, right? Is that what they're called?
I don't know. I can't. I just can't keep
Right.
track of the different
No,
generations.
my kids are all part of Gen Z, and they hate when I generalize. But now that they've been in the workforce, they go, I get it now. I get, because my one daughter, she said I had to fire somebody almost twice my age because they just refused to work. I'm like, how'd that feel? Like she was 24 and this person was 43, 44. So not quite, but about twice her age. Said, just got used to the idea that I didn't really have to work. And she goes, well, you have to work. And she goes, well, you're a kid. She goes, yeah, but you work for me. So she got her fired. It's an interesting experience.
Yeah, that is. Scott says it seems that they would have access to a lot of government benefits having 3 kids that young. Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
Maybe they did. I don't think anybody in this equation here is probably,
But isn't the point of that story just to show how this person, look at this poor, like, is it supposed to be a poor me because mom didn't do her job? Is that what
No,
we're supposed to get out of this?
it's I think I was just telling her story. The strict Christian household. I wasn't allowed to date till I was 16, and she just felt a need to describe her situation, how unusual it is. She said, people stare at us when we go places. Well, of
Mm,
course you do,
yeah.
because you're like a TV show, right? You're like a cult.
Yeah.
Although I will say, when the neighborhood I grew up in, and like I said, I grew up in central New Jersey, and there were farms and dirt roads and the whole bit, but you still had neighborhoods. And there was no family with fewer than 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the small families. Several families had 6, one had 11 and one had 13. So
yeah, it's not, I mean, I didn't grow up in the area where it's unheard of, but it seemed like if you had 2, that was considered like Oh, so that's all you want? You just want two? You're trying to save your money? Most of my friends had 4 or 5 siblings.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, okay. Six children together, a set of triplet, but this is the current husband, a set of triplet boys. And by the time she was 32, she's mom of 12. We were married and had our first child within the first year of meeting each other. I think she just likes having babies.
There could be something there. Maybe she's just
Yeah.
addicted to that.
But she says, I'm 100% sure that we're done having kids now. She got a lot of comments on whether she was on birth control or whether she was forced to get married so young. She explained that she was worried that her ex husband would be suspicious. Oh, I'm losing you.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know
there you
what's
go.
going on. I don't know what's going on with that.
Huh.
Interesting. Let me see what happens if there
Oh,
we go. Well,
oh, uh, there you go. Don't touch anything. um, she said she's her ex-husband, she said, would have been suspicious if she received birth control, hormonal birth control. It wasn't something we could talk about. So many on TikTok said, all in all, you've always been and always will be a beautiful woman and mother. Your children are blessings. You're raising them to be great people. Someone said talking about it gives others hope. She said, someone said, thank you. And she said, another one said, I made a mess with only 2 kids, so you have all my respect. Um, she
true.
did she did an interview with a newspaper. She said her family feels normal despite their size and the stares that they get from strangers in public. She said, I love having a big family. There's always someone to talk to. The downside to that is you never get away from people.
No. Now, to give maybe a little bit of a better spin on it, I will tell you this: having now adult children, 3 out of college, one trying to figure out how to wrap up her college. She's decided to change majors a couple of times. She's my youngest. She's the baby and has the baby syndrome. Every hallmark of the youngest child, she's got it. No matter, she's raised in the same rules, same household, same expectations, but suddenly she needs to have everything on a platter still. She's still wine. It's a whole different thing.
And
But
she gets treated differently than the other ones too, whether you
she
admit it or
technically
not.
does. She technically
Yeah.
does. A part of it is you get tired as a parent.
Yep.
Did your mom tell you? I was just tired. But in all honesty, because we were, I don't want to say strict, but we had expectations and we had guidelines and we did stick to whatever we told them. If we were gonna, if they said, or if we said to them, look, if you do this, you're going to get punished. Like we said it very clearly and we stuck to it. One my youngest, ironically, lost on a pool birthday party that we were going to host for all of her friends. She already had all the invites out. It was the day before. She was showing her behind. And my wife was like, if you don't stop now, we're done with the pool party. And she goes, you're not going to cancel my pool party. Don't tell my wife, don't challenge her, because she's just going to say
Oh,
challenge accepted. She called all the parents and said, we're sorry, we're not having the party. They learned the lesson because we stuck to our guns. They were not happy with us in those 15 to 18-year-old range of high school.
right.
We now have the greatest relationship with our adult children, such that we actually get game nights together. We hang out together. We actually did a family vacation together that they wanted us to go on, which I couldn't have
Nice.
imagined at their age, going to my parents and saying, Mom, Dad, you want to go to a beach vacation together? I'd be like, are you kidding? But because
That's
we have a
nice.
good relationship, I love it. It just, looking back, I don't want to relive their 15 to 18-year-old window ever again. I'm happy that they're adults. I'm happy they're back to normal. We had to re-educate them a little bit out of college, but for the most part, I'm pretty
Yeah.
happy.
Scott says some young cousin of mine got married when she was 16 and expecting, I guess it went better for them because they lived in the country, rural farming areas. Maybe, maybe it just worked. Um, my one of my nieces said to me, okay, so she's the oldest and she knows I'm the oldest. And she has 2 younger siblings. I have 2 younger siblings, except she's close to the next in life. They're much closer in age than my brothers and I were. So I was basically raised, I was like an only child. And then there's 6 years, about 5 and 3, 5.5, a little bit more
Mhm.
than 5.5 between me and the next. And then there's almost exactly 8 years between me and the youngest. So those the 2 boys are close, and then there's me. So like I've always been like kind of like here's the loop, and this is me over here. It's always
Yeah.
kind of been that way. Um, and being the oldest, of course, the standards are different. And so she comes to me and she goes, Aunt Mary, mom and dad give her anything she wants because all she does is whine and cry. And they just give it to her. And I go, all right, let me tell you right now. Mom and dad are going to tell you that they treat each one of you the same, but they don't. And she goes, I know they keep saying the same thing. And she goes, but they don't, they Kate do whatever she wants. I know. I said, so here's the thing. She's always going to have to do less than you, and she's always going to get more than you.
Mm.
And that's just the way it is. And you don't worry, Aunt Mary's putting away money for your therapy for when you get older.
You know, that is a great kind of a capstone to this. We do have the same rules for our kids, but we were very aware that the same things that would punish one child wouldn't work with another child. So you can't treat them all identical because they all were different people themselves. I had the
Right.
bookworm. So if I send the bookworm to her room, she loves it. I'm going to go read. If I send the kid who wants to
Right.
go play outside on her bike to her room, I've just murdered her, right? I mean, there's differences, and you have to know what works for each child, and that
Right.
is hard. It is hard because you
Yeah.
try to create some semblance of rules, but they're all unique individuals as well.
Yeah, the rules do loosen as time goes on. The first
They
one
do.
gets ridden pretty hard, and then
Yeah.
the standards are pretty tough, and and then by the time what's the saying? When you have a kid, for your first kid, you put the kid in the high chair, you give him a cookie, the kid throws the cookie on the ground, you pick the cookie up, you throw it away, you give the kid another cookie. The
Right.
second one comes along, you pick the cookie up, you blow it off, and give it back to the kid. The third kid throws it on the ground, you take the kid out of the high chair and put him on the floor,
Right.
right?
Right.
With the
Right.
cookie.
You know what? And I didn't know that you were the oldest until you told your story, but I am the oldest as well. And yeah, I tell my youngest brothers that came along several years later, because it was me and my brother were 2 years apart. And then all of a sudden, like in your situation, 6.5 years later, mom and dad said that there was a whoopsie. And so they had to have another one. So they would, because my mom believed they should grow up together. So she had another kid. So I had to learn how to raise them. But I told them, I'm like, you guys, I paved the super highway for you. Everything that I had to go through, you guys didn't have to deal with half of the stuff
Yep.
I had to go through. So
Yep.
that's just
Yeah.
part of being firstborn.
And the only girl, so the rules weren't harder for me at all.
No. Uh,
Well, Alan Sanders, thank you so much for joining us. You can catch him on 95.5 out of Atlanta, still doing mornings, correct?
yes, I do mornings at a different station, WBHF, which is AM 1450 and FM 100.3. You can stream that online if you want. And then I'm on 95.5. If you go to WSBradio.com/The Alan Sanders Show, you can get my daily download there, or wherever you find your podcast. It's also a digital show. Everybody's putting their shows out digitally, so you can just catch it wherever. Just look for The Alan Sanders Show.
That is fantastic. And God bless you still doing mornings because that is just not my jam. Oh, dear Lord in
I am
heaven
a
above.
night owl. I don't go to
So am
bed till
I.
usually 11 or 12, and I get up at 4:30.
Well, the last show I had, we had to be at the station at 4 because we went on the air at 5.
Ugh.
It's like the only radio show in America, I think, a morning show that goes on at 5 for some god unknown reason, but they did 5 to 9,
Mm.
and it was awful. It was just sheer torture. And the difference is and do you get to work remotely or are you in
No,
studio?
I go to a studio. Yeah. Now
Oh,
my daily show I do digitally, I do remotely, but my morning show I have to drive in. That's morning drive. That's news, weather, traffic talk, sports, information,
yeah.
and some guests every now and then that I get to interview.
Yeah, it's a newsreel. I get
Yeah.
it. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's very high paced. But what men don't understand, especially since everything's on video now, is so for me to be at the station at 4 o'clock in the morning, now, especially because we would do TV, we had the local Fox affiliate came in on one
Mhm.
day a week. I had to get up at 2 to do my hair and makeup, right? Because the guys just roll in, like go, okay, hold on, let me do my hair, and I'm like, I hate you all. I hate each and every one of you. You suck, you suck, you suck. I hated it because I had to get up at 2 to
Yeah.
do all of that. So
Well, I want to thank you
thank
for
you.
bringing me on because number one, you do video, which I'm not yet prepared to do for myself yet. I'm of that mindset that radio was supposed to exist between your ears. It's something that's supposed to be like this intimate thing where you're going into the thoughts of some other person and you're having this sort of, it's almost like a conversation where you don't hear them, but they feel like they're part of it. And now there's this distraction of video and everyone's doing it. And I hear the same thing. Even the guys are saying, I can't roll into work with a ball cap and a sweatshirt anymore because I have to be on brand for what I'm representing. And it's
Yeah, I'm
like we're
feeling so
becoming
sorry for you
visual.
boys.
Yeah. Well, I get it. I have a friend of mine. She's a country music DJ. She works at 94.9 The Bull. She's like, what is this? I got into radio so I could get out of bed 10 minutes before I go turn on the microphone, put my hair in a ponytail, and I'm done.
Yep.
Now I got to
Yep.
get all, in her words, I got to get all dialed up before I can go to work in the morning.
I know. It's terrible. It's just awful. But I put makeup on this afternoon for everyone. I did not put it on to go to the hospital. Maybe that's why they wouldn't call me Your Majesty today.
Maybe. Well, let me ask you this, your opinion. You've been involved. You've seen the evolution of radio. Will we get back to where it's just audio, or are we forever in this mix of everything's now visual entertainment?
I think everything's visual at this point. I think corporate radio is killing radio, and I think it's all visual at this point. I really do. I think you'll always have the audio for your car. I think that stays. You can't really do video in your car. I mean, obviously you can, but I think it's super dangerous if it's available in the front seat. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it will always be. I think that will always. I think radio will exist. I think we're in for a world of hurt. I think the glory days of radio are gone. And I think corporate consumption of all of the radio stations has really changed it, because you got bean counters who never ever worked in radio but have an MBA from, who knows where, some school. What is it? Phoenix University? Is that the one that's like mail order, right? Yeah. Right, SNHU. And not that there's anything wrong with those schools, but the point is they've got, these MBAs, so they think they know everything. And they've never worked in a radio station before, which running a radio station isn't the same as running, a shoe manufacturer or something else. It's right. A totally different animal, and you're hiring people for different qualities, and they don't get it. And I think I've seen the downfall. My last job, the computer would boot me out several times during the show, and I'm like, what? So I don't have any information. I've got my stories aren't in front of me. Everything's gone. So they told me to just bring a laptop in. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah. Thank God I have a smartphone. Half the time, that's what saves me when I had to go to look something up.
Wait, but I'm like, that shouldn't be the answer. I'm pretty sure. But
let me
anyway.
And one more opinion. I know I don't want to go too long.
That's okay.
One of the things I've been talking about a lot on my show, on my daily show, is you can't just listen to legacy mainstream media, because it is corporate media and it is all part of a propaganda wing. Are we going to see more folks like what we're doing here move into independent citizen journalism, citizen broadcasting? Are we going to get more of the independent to get to the news? And are we going to finally start seeing maybe that the corporate media will realize that they can't control the narrative on everything, because when they do, nobody's going to watch them anymore?
I think there's a winnowing out. Look what's happening to Fox. Look what's happening there, and look what's happening. Newsmax is rising. Fox, you're watching this happen. I think it's going to be cyclical. I think the cycle is going to be fast. As far as like the citizen journalist, it's tough to compete against the corporate. Are there some who make it through? Yeah, look at James O'Keefe, right? James O'Keefe made it through, but what did they do to him? Look what they did to him. They took his own company away from him. So he started another one. That's great, but there's a lot of people who don't have the wherewithal. It's a super hard path. If you want to be able to have a roof over your head, it's not necessarily a viable path, if you want to be able to do that. And most of these people start out at look at the success of the Daily Caller. Look at the success of the Blaze, Daily Wire. There's a lot of those outlets that are independent of a corporate ownership, but they're also more web-based, which makes them video-based, which makes them podcast-based. They have nothing to do with radio.
Right. But I guess that's the question I'm asking. Do you think, because I'm encouraging my listeners to seek out those other alternative, independent kind of broadcasts and mediums. It's great to listen to the nightly news to know where the fire was or where the traffic accident is. But if you're going to learn anything about what's going on in government, if you want to learn what's really going on, if you think you're getting it in the 30 or 60-second soundbite on your nightly newscast, not at all.
Oh, no. No, I agree with you. I haven't watched local news in God knows how long, because I always know there's a fire in Brooklyn. There's, somebody's been stabbed because there's no knife control in New York. So they're killing the whales off the coast of New Jersey. I already know what the local stories are. Canadian smoke, and they want to take, I can't have a gas stove, but Canada is spewing enough carbon into the air to kill everything for like the next 200 years, but I can't have a gas stove. I know that. But I do a lot of my stuff, it's all web based,
Hmm.
because that's currently where those individual independent journalists are.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think you need to widen your sources. And believe it or not, I do go to Twitter because I do see sources, but you have to be very careful. People post stuff, and I'm like, and I look at the headline, and I'm like, what?
Hmm.
And I look at it, and I'm like, and I look at the source, and I'm like, okay, well, who the hell is this? Right? You have to be careful. And
Yep.
unfortunately, that takes time. And it takes thought. You and I live in this. A lot of our viewers live in this, right? A lot of you guys live in this. Scott says no more FM radios and cars anymore coming up. That they got rid of. They went back on that, Scott. That's not happening anymore. They went back on that.
Yeah, I think that was
Um,
actually AM, not FM. They were trying to get rid of AM radio, which a lot of the
right.
smaller stations are still maybe only AM, and so that was a big, huge thing with, you
Right.
got New York City. Yeah, you're gonna have your FMs. But so many parts of the country still have AM.
But do you know the major talkers in New York are only on AM?
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
WABC and WOR are AM.
Mhm.
Philadelphia, PHT is AM only. But when you get out in the Midwest, when you get out in the western part of the country, the only thing you can really pick up is AM.
Right.
So getting rid of those stations was, and don't tell me it's not a ploy to get rid of talk radio because, I've
That's
got my
exactly.
tinfoil hat in the closet behind me. So,
You know what? You call me a conspiracy theorist because whatever's a conspiracy today has been turning into be fact usually 18 months down the road.
right?
Yep.
Yep, you're 100% right. So I agree with you. The problem is it's way easier to put the TV on and listen to your favorite news anchor, because he or she's hot, and just listen to that in the background while you're doing stuff, give you the news blurbs that you talk about, and then go, okay, I'm informed, and you go on your way. When in reality, that's so cherry picked and so edited and has a distinct point of view. It's not news, it's opinion. That
Right.
line has been blurred. When they're talking about the fire in Harlem, that's just reporting,
Right.
right? That's news. But when you get into politics, a lot of it now is opinion, not news, and people don't know the difference. So it takes time. And
Mhm.
I think that's where it falls down, is a lot of people are interested but maybe not interested enough, or just aren't going to take the time to dig to find out, because sometimes you have to go to news, and I tell everyone, go to news sources you normally wouldn't go to. I mean, the yentas were yapping on the yapping yentas were on the View today in the waiting room in the radiology department, and I seriously was ready, looking for a sharp object to stick into
Mhm.
my ear, because I couldn't take it. But yet I will turn on Joe and Mika on MSNBC in the morning. I mean, because I
Oh,
realize if I start the day off there, it's only going to get better.
well,
So
you kind of have to know what they're sending to their
yes,
audience and trying to figure out,
yes,
okay, what's their version of what they think is the truth. And a lot of times it's their massaged view that they want you, their audience, to believe. I find myself listening to all that just so that way I can prepare the counter argument and say, here's what else you're missing. So I
well,
here's my call to your and my audience. You have found two people that you should have in the background while you're cooking. You can put on the show and just listen while you're cooking, and you're going to learn
there
a
you
lot.
go. Exactly.
How
Well,
about
thank
that?
you for that. I do appreciate that. So, just very quickly, thank you so much. Thank you to, we do have a couple of new subscribers. Just wanted to shout out to Ken, Greg Howe. Thank you for your comments. Sherry, thank you. Betty and Omi. Appreciate all of you guys, subscribers, everybody. Thank you to everyone who is commenting tonight. Got a few quick comments here at the last minute. Who's here? Scott. Okay. Thank you, Scott. And tomorrow, let's see, Thursday and Friday, I am in for Brian Kilmeade on his radio program. So you know where to find me there. You can go to radio.foxnews.com. He's also around the country, so you can find him on a station near you, or you can listen online at radio. And I think he's on iHeart. Just look for Brian Kilmeade or Fox News Radio on
Mhm.
iHeart, and I think tune in as well. Monday, I will be co-hosting mornings on WPHT from 6 to 10 a.m. Monday afternoon, I'm on the Chris Salcedo Show on Newsmax TV between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. And then Tuesday's the podcast again. So that's that.
Look at
So
you. You're going to be busy.
It's crazy. It's just
That's
absolutely
awesome, though.
crazy. No complaints. No complaints, though. So thank you so much, Alan. I hope we do this again. This worked out. It was so much fun. Thank
Loved it,
you.
loved it, loved it. Anytime. You just let me know.
All right. Take care so much. And we are going to leave here. We're going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. See
See ya.
ya.